Welcome back to Avoidant Decoded. Today, we're going deeper than the silence, distance, and mixed signals of avoidant behavior to uncover what happens when an avoidant finally meets someone who makes emotional closeness feel safe instead of frightening. Some people seem to move through life as though they could live perfectly well without anyone. They appear independent, emotionally controlled, and almost impossible to affect. You may have cared deeply for someone like this, or perhaps you recognize some of these traits within yourself. From the outside, they can look remarkably calm in situations that would leave someone else devastated. They can walk away from relationships without showing much emotion, keep people at a comfortable distance, and act as though nothing has the power to truly hurt them. But there is something people often get wrong about this kind of behavior. Emotional distance does not necessarily mean a person feels nothing. Sometimes it means they feel far more than they know how to handle. They have simply learned to protect themselves by keeping those feelings hidden. Once you understand that, avoidant behavior starts to look very different. Beneath the silence, the emotional shutdowns, and the constant need for personal space is often someone who cares deeply about connection but has difficulty admitting just how important it is to them. And the truth is, an avoidant person does not usually experience deep emotional connection with just anyone. It takes a very particular kind of relationship for them to lower the defenses they've spent years building. If you've ever loved someone with avoidant tendencies, or if you've struggled with your own need to create distance, this is something worth understanding. Eventually, there can come a moment when those carefully constructed walls begin to weaken. Their need for control starts competing with feelings they can no longer completely suppress. Most people never get to see that side of them. They only encounter the guarded version, the person who keeps everyone just far enough away to feel safe. But the rare people who somehow reach beyond those defenses can become incredibly significant. Once an avoidant allows someone into the private emotional space they've protected for so long, that connection can leave an impression that doesn't simply vanish because the relationship ends. One of the strongest beliefs an avoidant can carry is the idea that they don't need anybody. On the surface, that belief can look like confidence. It can even sound admirable. They may tell themselves that depending on another person is dangerous, that emotional attachment creates weakness, and that complete independence is the safest possible way to live. If you've ever tried to love someone who thinks this way, you know how confusing and lonely it can become. You can spend hours sitting beside them, talking, laughing, and sharing experiences, yet somehow feel as though there is still an invisible door between you and the deepest part of them. What looks like independence isn't always genuine confidence. Sometimes it is a survival mechanism. At some point in their life, they may have learned that getting close to people leads to disappointment. Perhaps trusting someone resulted in betrayal. Perhaps affection was inconsistent. Perhaps emotional needs were ignored, rejected, or made to feel like a burden. Whatever the original experience was, the lesson became deeply rooted. Depending on someone means giving them the power to hurt you. Over time, they learn to rely almost entirely on themselves. Those lessons don't automatically disappear simply because they become adults. They can quietly influence everything they do in relationships, including how they handle disagreements, how they react when someone gets too close, how quickly they withdraw, and even how they show affection. They may repeatedly tell themselves that solitude is better, but human beings are still wired for connection. Attachment styles may differ, but the need to feel understood, accepted, valued, and emotionally connected exists in all of us. An avoidant person is not exempt from that need. Deep underneath the fear, they can still want intimacy just as strongly as anyone else. The difference is that they may not know how to tolerate it when it actually arrives. Sometimes they don't even recognize how much they want it because they've spent so much time convincing themselves that needing anyone is dangerous. You can often see this contradiction when emotions become more serious. An avoidant may appear completely composed in ordinary situations, but conversations about feelings can suddenly make them uncomfortable. As emotional intimacy increases, they may start creating distance. When commitment becomes more real, they may suddenly say they need space. When a relationship starts moving toward greater closeness, they can become quieter, colder, or harder to reach. From the outside, this can easily be interpreted as a lack of interest. But sometimes the deeper issue isn't the absence of emotion. It's the fear created by having too much emotion. Being genuinely known can feel dangerous to someone who has learned to protect themselves. If another person sees everything beneath the surface, they now have access to the parts that the avoidant has spent years hiding. That creates vulnerability, and vulnerability introduces the possibility of rejection, abandonment, disappointment, and pain. So instead of moving toward the person they care about, their instinct may tell them to create distance. They retreat, become emotionally unavailable, and strengthen the very walls that once protected them. People looking from the outside may interpret this as emotional strength, but sometimes what appears to be strength is simply a highly developed ability to hide fear. The irony is that avoidant people can desire the same things everyone else desires. They want affection. They want to be understood. They want someone with whom they can feel peaceful. They want emotional safety. But when those things become real instead of hypothetical, fear can suddenly become louder than desire. Love asks them to become vulnerable, and vulnerability requires them to surrender some control. That can feel incredibly threatening to someone whose entire emotional system was built around self-protection. So rather than moving closer, they create distance. They may convince themselves that leaving is easier, that they don't care, or that the relationship isn't important. But often, the withdrawal is not proof that nothing was felt. It can be evidence that what they felt became difficult to manage. If you've ever experienced the push and pull pattern with an avoidant person, you know exactly how confusing this can be. One moment, they're warm, playful, open, and emotionally present. They're talking freely, sharing personal thoughts, laughing more, and allowing you to see a softer side that they don't show everyone. Then suddenly, something changes. They become distant, quiet, distracted, or emotionally cold. Naturally, you begin questioning everything. You wonder whether those beautiful moments were genuine or whether you imagined the connection. But the warmth can have been completely real. The vulnerability can have been genuine. The withdrawal that followed may simply have been fear taking over again. They don't necessarily move away because their feelings disappeared. Sometimes they move away because those feelings became too intense. For years, many avoidant people learn to bury their need for closeness under work, ambition, hobbies, entertainment, constant productivity, or anything else that keeps their mind occupied. They fill every quiet moment because silence can make uncomfortable emotions impossible to ignore. They may tell everyone, including themselves, that they're completely satisfied being alone. Yet, when the distractions disappear and everything becomes quiet, there can be a loneliness they struggle to explain. Then, occasionally, someone enters their life who feels different. This person doesn't chase them relentlessly. They don't demand immediate emotional openness. They don't try to force intimacy. Instead, they are steady, patient, calm, and emotionally secure. They can care deeply without making the avoidant feel trapped. They can give space without disappearing. They can communicate without turning every emotional moment into a crisis. And something unexpected begins to happen. Slowly, the avoidant starts discovering that connection doesn't always feel threatening. For once, closeness begins to feel peaceful. Because that experience can be so unfamiliar, it can become extremely meaningful. Even if the avoidant never openly explains how important that person became, the emotional experience can stay with them. They may act as though they have moved forward. They may remain quiet. They may even convince themselves that the relationship was simply another chapter. But internally, they can struggle to forget the person who made vulnerability feel less frightening. This is why describing avoidant people as emotionally detached or naturally lonely only tells part of the story. Their independence can become an identity they created because it helped them survive emotionally. Underneath that identity is still a human being who wants to feel loved, understood, accepted, and safe. The problem is that they've spent so long believing self-reliance is their strongest protection that opening their heart can feel like violating a rule they've followed for years. And that's precisely what makes their deepest connections so significant. When someone who has spent years believing they need nobody finally allows another person into their inner world, even slightly, that moment carries enormous emotional weight. It takes courage because they're doing something their instincts have repeatedly told them not to do. They're taking a risk with the very thing they've been protecting. So the next time an avoidant person pulls back, becomes silent, or suddenly seems unreachable, don't automatically assume the distance means rejection. Sometimes distance is protection. It can come from fear of vulnerability, fear of being hurt, fear of depending on another person, or fear that the person they finally trust will eventually leave. Understanding this doesn't mean excusing unhealthy behavior. It simply gives you a more accurate way to interpret what may be happening beneath the surface. Instead of immediately chasing every withdrawal, you begin looking at the larger pattern. You replace pressure with patience. You understand that an avoidant doesn't need another person to rescue them or force their walls down. What often helps more is experiencing a relationship that teaches them, slowly and consistently, that closeness doesn't automatically lead to pain, that needing someone doesn't make them weak, that love doesn't always end in abandonment, and that they can remain an independent person while still allowing another person to matter. Their emotional armor may look like complete independence, but beneath it is still the same human desire to belong somewhere. They want to feel accepted without constantly performing. They want to be seen without being judged. They want to experience closeness without feeling that they are losing themselves. Most people never reach that hidden part of an avoidant because the defenses are simply too strong. Someone can spend years with an avoidant and still feel as though they're standing outside a locked emotional door. That experience can make you question yourself. You may wonder whether you weren't attractive enough, interesting enough, loving enough, or important enough. But their inability to open up isn't automatically a reflection of your value. Often, it reflects an internal belief they formed long before they met you. Closeness is dangerous. Still, there are rare people who somehow get beyond those defenses. Not because they chase harder than everyone else. Not because they demand more attention. And not because they somehow possess a magical ability to fix an avoidant. It happens because their presence doesn't constantly activate the fear. They bring steadiness instead of emotional chaos, consistency instead of unpredictability, and safety instead of pressure. They don't force the avoidant to open, they simply create an environment where opening becomes less frightening. Their behavior communicates something without needing to say it directly. I care about you, but I won't control you. I won't chase you endlessly, but I won't disappear just because you need some space. I'm here, but I still have boundaries. That balance can be completely unfamiliar to someone who has always associated intimacy with pressure. Think of someone who has spent years getting burned every time they move toward a flame. Eventually, they stop trusting warmth itself. They don't distinguish between something that can comfort them and something that can hurt them. Then one day, they experience warmth that doesn't cause pain. Slowly, they begin to understand that not everything they approach is dangerous. That's what a safe relationship can represent to an avoidant person. It doesn't erase years of fear instantly. It doesn't destroy every defense overnight. Instead, it repeatedly provides evidence that closeness can exist without emotional punishment. The person remains consistent. Affection doesn't come with manipulation. Honesty doesn't turn into chaos. Space doesn't become abandonment. Love doesn't become control. Little by little, the armor can begin to loosen. Ironically, many people who genuinely love an avoidant unintentionally strengthen the very fears they're trying to overcome. They become anxious when the avoidant withdraws, so they chase harder. They ask for constant reassurance. They demand explanations. They try to close every inch of emotional distance as quickly as possible. Those reactions are understandable because being pushed away by someone you love hurts. But from the avoidant's perspective, intense pursuit can confirm everything they've feared about relationships. It can make closeness feel overwhelming and make freedom feel threatened. The rare person responds differently. They don't participate in the endless chase and withdraw cycle. They remain emotionally grounded. They care without demanding immediate proof. They allow breathing room without disappearing. They stay connected without becoming controlling. For perhaps the first time, the avoidant doesn't feel like someone is trying to capture them emotionally. That doesn't mean tolerating disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional neglect. Healthy boundaries still matter. It simply means understanding that genuine emotional safety comes from being authentic rather than trying to manipulate the person into opening up. The message is simple. I won't force you to come closer, but I also won't abandon myself just to keep you comfortable. Then the changes may begin appearing in small ways. They might start telling you more about their day. They may share something personal without being asked. They might become more playful around you. They may hold your hand longer, initiate contact more often, or remain present during a difficult conversation instead of immediately escaping. To someone else, these things may look insignificant, but for an avoidant, they can represent enormous movement. They usually won't announce, "I'm learning to trust you." Their behavior will say it before their words do. Their face may become softer around you. Their guardedness may decrease. Their warmth may become more consistent. The emotional distance may slowly shrink. These changes don't happen because their attachment style suddenly disappears. They happen because, for once, they are choosing to stay even while their instincts are telling them to run. Opening up can feel like exposing the most vulnerable parts of their identity. Everything they've learned about protecting themselves may tell them that staying distant is safer. Yet they remain. They continue the relationship. They take another emotional risk. And that decision can be incredibly meaningful. This is also why simply being loving isn't enough by itself. You can be kind, patient, loyal, and deeply caring, and still be unable to reach an avoidant person's deepest emotional world. The issue isn't always how much love you give. Emotional safety matters just as much. They need to experience your presence as something calming rather than threatening. At first, they may still resist. They may move towards you and then retreat. They may open up one week and become distant the next. These mixed signals can feel exhausting, but sometimes they're not calculated games. They can be unconscious tests of safety. Can I trust this person? If I need space, will they panic? If I reveal something vulnerable, will they use it against me? If I become close, will I lose my independence? When their withdrawal is met with calm consistency rather than desperation or punishment, something slowly changes. They begin discovering that a relationship can survive space. They learn that intimacy doesn't necessarily mean losing themselves. They begin experiencing love without constant emotional chaos. This doesn't mean they suddenly become perfect partners. Old patterns can still return. Fear can still appear. They may still need solitude. They may still struggle to communicate certain emotions. Healing isn't a switch that gets turned on one day. But once they've experienced genuine safety, something fundamental has changed. They've now seen evidence that contradicts the belief they've carried for years, and that experience can stay with them. The deepest part of this process isn't found in dramatic declarations or movie-like romantic gestures. It's built quietly through consistency. It's someone who can love without possessing, remain present without controlling, communicate without creating emotional storms, and respect boundaries without turning distance into punishment. When an avoidant encounters that kind of relationship, their understanding of love can begin to change. They may stop viewing every relationship as something they eventually need to escape. They may start realizing that intimacy and independence can coexist. They may discover that allowing another person to matter doesn't mean surrendering their identity. People sometimes assume avoidants are destined to remain distant forever. That's too simplistic. Many are capable of profound emotional attachment. The difference is that trust can take them much longer to build. They may need someone whose presence feels safe enough to challenge what they've believed about relationships for years. And when that happens, the connection may become anything but casual. It isn't simply about attraction, excitement, or convenience. It becomes significant because they are doing something that once felt almost impossible, allowing another person close enough to matter. Their walls can look impossible to penetrate. Their silence can feel permanent. Their emotional distance can make you believe nothing will ever change. Yet sometimes, the presence of one emotionally safe person can begin shifting all of it. Not by forcing the walls down, but by giving the person behind those walls a reason to stop hiding. When an avoidant truly bonds with someone, that relationship can carry enormous emotional weight. They're choosing the very thing they've spent years protecting themselves from. Trust doesn't come easily when emotional distance has been their survival strategy. So when they finally lower those defenses, they're taking a significant personal risk. And that's why their attachment may not always be obvious from the outside. People assume avoidants move on easily because they can leave physically or become silent emotionally. But deep attachment doesn't always announce itself through constant contact. Someone can leave while still carrying the emotional experience internally. This isn't necessarily about obsession or refusing to move forward. It's about the fact that experiencing genuine emotional safety can change a person's understanding of relationships. Once they know what it feels like to be close without feeling threatened, they cannot completely erase that experience. They may eventually meet other people. They may enter new relationships. They may build an entirely different life. But the person who first showed them that intimacy could feel peaceful may remain emotionally significant in a unique way. What mattered wasn't simply the person's personality or appearance. It was the experience they created. Their presence reached places where fear had always lived without making those fears feel more dangerous. That kind of experience is rare. Of course, this doesn't mean every problem disappears after one meaningful connection. Growth takes time. Avoidant habits can return. Someone may still withdraw when they become overwhelmed. They may still struggle to express what they're feeling. Old defenses don't disappear simply because they've met someone safe. But if you became the person who helped them realize they didn't always have to hide, you've given them something difficult to forget. Time doesn't necessarily erase that lesson. Distance doesn't automatically erase it. Even periods of silence don't change the fact that they once experienced closeness differently. That's why an avoidant withdrawing after a deep connection can be so confusing. You may look at their silence and wonder whether the relationship ever mattered. You may replay conversations and question whether you misunderstood everything. But fear should not be the only evidence you use to judge the relationship. Look at the entire journey. If they allowed you to see parts of themselves they normally protect, that meant something. If they trusted you with vulnerabilities they rarely share, that meant something. If they repeatedly returned despite their instinct to withdraw, that meant something. Their fear may have been real at the same time their feelings were real. Very few people reach that level of trust with someone who has spent years protecting their emotional independence. That's not because other people aren't worthy, it's because deep trust can be incredibly difficult for an avoidant to build. Imagine spending most of your life protecting your heart, only to meet someone who changes the way you understand emotional closeness. That isn't merely another relationship, it can become a turning point. They aren't only learning to love another person, they're learning that they can survive being emotionally known. If an avoidant ever let you pass the walls they built to protect themselves, never assume that connection meant nothing simply because they later became distant. Sometimes the person who feels safest is also the person who awakens the deepest fears. Real connection doesn't always look loud or obvious. Sometimes it quietly changes someone from the inside. And when an avoidant finally discovers that love can feel safe without costing them their freedom, they may never forget the person who showed them that truth.